Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. In today's video we'll be discussing the possible DLC for Elden Ring. Elden Ring is a game that has taken the world by storm with 13.4 million units sold as of May 11th, which makes it very likely that we'll see a DLC for the game at some point in the future. Although there is no official information yet, there are hints currently in the game for new areas and good content that has been recovered that could also be related to a potential expansion. Before we start off, we need to give a shout out to the YouTube channel JawRaptor. His video gave us the idea and inspiration for our video, so we send our thanks to him. Now that we're done with that, let's dive straight in. From Software has a history of releasing paid DLC expansions for their games, which often add new areas, enemies, bosses, and weapons to the base game. However, it is not unheard of for the company to release free updates and extra content for their games as well. In the case of Elden Ring, there has been speculation that we might see some free extra content, such as the Colosseums mentioned in the quote. These are currently inaccessible buildings that players have found in the game, but are unable to enter due to being locked. It is possible that these Colosseums could be used for new content, such as new boss battles or challenge arenas. In addition to the Colosseums, past updates for From Software games have introduced new questlines and items, so it is possible that we could see similar additions to Elden Ring in the form of free content. It is also worth noting that From Software has a strong community of modders and content creators, so even if the company does not release official free content, there still may be new mods and fan-made content for players to enjoy. YouTuber Sakura Doobie explored these Colosseums some more. In their exploration, Sakura Doobie dug through the game files related to the Colosseums and discovered two enemies that were originally intended to appear in the middle of one of the Colosseums. These enemies are named Gladiator Large and Old Lion of the Arena. This discovery has led to speculation among fans about the possibility of these enemies being added as part of a future free update or DLC. It's important to note that game files often contain content that is not necessarily meant to be included in the final product, so the inclusion of these enemies in the files does not guarantee their eventual appearance in the game. However, the fact that there are references to these enemies in the game files, combined with the presence of the inaccessible Colosseums in the game world, has given rise to excitement among fans about the potential for new content in Elden Ring. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel to stay up to date on all the latest news and speculation surrounding Elden Ring and other upcoming games. Point of Grace is a term used in Elden Ring to refer to the game's checkpoints or bonfires. These checkpoints are essential for players to progress through the game as they serve as a way to respawn after dying and allow players to replenish their health and other resources. Regarding Stormville Colosseum, it is a possible location that was cut from the final game but still exists in the game files. The fact that the Colosseum is named after Stormville and located near Stormfield Castle suggests that it was intended to be part of the game's main storyline or side quests. The presence of enemies such as Gladiator Large and Old Lion of the Arena in the game files indicates that these Colosseums were likely intended to be arenas where players could engage in battles with these enemies, potentially as part of a quest or event. As for the theory mentioned about the Old Lion of the Arena, it's possible that this enemy was meant to be a boss that players would have to defeat in the Colosseum. Boss fights are a staple of From Software games, and Elden Ring is no exception. The mention of the enemy named Old Lion of the Arena and the location of the Stormfield Colosseum close to Stormfield Castle suggest that these Colosseums were meant to be a significant part of Elden Ring's gameplay experience. It's possible that players were meant to engage in arena battles against various enemies, including bosses like the Old Lion of the Arena. As for the theory about the Old Lion of the Arena, it's possible that this enemy is related to one of the main characters or factions in Elden Ring's story. Perhaps it's a champion of one of the kingdoms players can align with, or a guardian of a sacred area players must explore. Alternatively, it could be a powerful foe that players must defeat to gain access to a new area or unlock a new questline. Of course, this is all speculation, but it's interesting to consider the possibilities. It's also worth noting that the fact that these Colosseums were not accessible in the base game could suggest that they were initially intended as DLC content. Whether they will be released as part of paid DLC or as free updates remains to be seen, but the fact that they are already present in the game's files gives fans hope that they may be able to explore them in the future. The fact that there is a file in the game that references a reception desk suggests that these Colosseums were designed to be interactive locations where players can set themselves up for a fight. It's worth noting that From Software has a history of adding free content to their games through patches and updates. Therefore, it's possible that these Colosseums could be made accessible in the future, perhaps as part of a free update. However, it's also possible that they may be included in a paid DLC expansion. Regardless of how players gain access to the Colosseums, the fact that they exist and are being teased by From Software suggests that they'll play a significant role in the game. They could offer players a new challenge and the opportunity to face off against powerful enemies, including the Gladiator Large and Old Line of the Arena mentioned earlier. Historically, From Software has released paid expansions for their games, but they have also released free updates with new content. The idea is that the Colosseums could be part of one of these updates. The Colosseums could potentially offer a new gameplay experience for players. They could be used to duel other players in PvP combat, which is a popular feature in many multiplayer games. Additionally, players could refight bosses they've already defeated, which could provide a new challenge and potentially yield new rewards. The mention of the Old Line of the Arena in the files could be a hint at a new boss that could be added to the Colosseum. This boss could be designed specifically for the Colosseum environment, with unique mechanics that are different from the main game's bosses. This would add even more variety to the game and provide an incentive for players to return to the Colosseums even after they have defeated all the other bosses. Remember that Sekiro added the ability for players to refight already defeated bosses as free DLC. The idea of adding content that reuses assets in this way is appealing to developers, as it provides a way to satisfy players' desires for more content without requiring the creation of entirely new assets. Furthermore, there is a possibility of different Colosseums having different functions. This could mean that one Colosseum could be dedicated to PvE fights against bosses, while another could be designed for PvP duels. Additionally, the last Colosseum could be reserved for larger scale PvP fights, perhaps featuring multiple players. It's important to note that release date speculation is just that, speculation. There's no guarantee that we'll see any DLC or expansion for Elden Ring, and if we do, it's impossible to predict exactly when it will be released. That being said, there are a few factors that could potentially give us a clue when we might see some new content for the game. For example, From Software has typically released DLC or expansions for their games several months after the initial release. If we follow this pattern, we could potentially see a DLC or expansion for Elden Ring sometime in the latter half of 2023. It's also worth noting that From Software is notorious for being tight-lipped about their plans, so even if there is a DLC or expansion in the works, we may not hear about it until shortly before its release. Ultimately, the only way to know for sure when we'll see new content for Elden Ring is to wait for an official announcement from the developers. The Elden Ring hype and speculation continues to grow as players eagerly await news of future updates and expansions. From Software has a history of adding new content to their games after release, and given the popularity of Elden Ring, it's highly likely that we will see some form of additional content in the future. The Colosseums and other unused assets in the game suggest that there are still unexplored areas and challenges waiting for players to discover. As for the release date of any potential DLC or expansions, it's difficult to say for sure when we can expect them. From Software tends to keep their plans closely guarded, and they often only announce projects when they're ready. However, the fact that Elden Ring was released with unused assets and files related to Colosseums and other content suggests that there's more to come, and it's likely that From Software has already begun working on future updates and expansions. In conclusion, while we can't say for certain what the future holds for Elden Ring, it's clear that the game has captured the imagination of players around the world. With its fast open world, challenging gameplay and intriguing lore, Elden Ring has all the ingredients for a long and successful lifecycle. Whether it's through DLC, expansions, or other forms of content, fans can look forward to more exciting adventures in the world of Elden Ring in the years to come. Interested in the new Resident Evil 4 remake? Then you gotta check out our next video where we go in depth on this legendary horror game. Thank you for watching this video and learning more about the potential DLC and expansion content for Elden Ring. If you enjoyed this content, please consider giving this video a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel for more gaming news and analysis. We appreciate your support and look forward to bringing you more exciting updates in the future.